Guten Tag, Lukas.
Hi Ronald.
Hörst du mich?
Ja, ich höre dich gut. Hörst du mich?
Gut. Wie ist das Wetter in Berlin?
Sonnig, es ist heiß. Unsere Klimaanlage funktioniert, our climate is not really working. I don't know how good your German is. Or for the sake of the audience, I will switch to English.
Okay. I agree with you. Hi, Lucas. Welcome to our event. We spoke yesterday. Can you introduce yourself and Joblift to the audience, please?
Yes, of course. My pleasure. So, thanks for having us in the first place. And to give you a little bit of background on Joblift, because I guess most of the audience won't know us, at least our brand name. I'm originally from Austria, so my background is in consulting, and 8 years ago I joined Zalando here in Berlin, and that was kind of the transition where I got to know, on the one hand, the entire entrepreneurial setup here in Berlin. Got really interested in that, and I wouldn't say this was the exact moment when I said, hey, I want to found a company in the job space, but at Zalando we were working a lot on product, a lot on matching, and I guess this is something that we're going to touch a little bit later in this interview. Yeah, and so 5 years ago now, I've co-founded Joblift with a couple of partners, and our vision is to become the digital career advisor for everyone. So we saw simply that in the job search space, specifically for job seekers that are heavily relying on job platforms to find their next best position, in a sense, there was, in my point of view, a major vacuum in a sense of the way matching was done or job search was done, there hasn't really been any development, and that technology was only starting to kind of revolutionize the industry. Because I mentioned this example also in an interview previously to Peter, where we say that, for example, what Zalando did in the fashion space, or what Amazon did in the grocery space, or several other platforms out there did in really fundamental parts of our life, I think that hasn't been done to such an extent in the job space. Yeah, and this is our vision. Now, 5 years into the game, we know that it is a big quest, and it is not as easy as to match somebody to buy a shoe or something, because it's a much more complex product, a job and a career in the bigger sense. But we are daily really fascinated by the task and try to make recruiting a better word for everybody involved.
Yeah. Joblift started as a regular aggregator. Like in the Netherlands, we know Indeed, of course, worldwide, but something like Jobbird, we have some extras. What makes you different at this moment? I mean, Indeed labels itself as the Google of the job market. How would you label Joblift?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't like to work with labels, to be honest with you, because if you run around and say you're the Spotify of the job world, so I think this is or the Uber of the job world, I'm always a little bit hesitant and frown a little bit on that. So we really focus on ourselves, and I think the difference that we really want to play is really focused around matching and the vision that I laid out before. Yesterday in our phone call, I, for the first time, made this comparison, and I'm absolutely aware of the fact that as a job seeker, if you see Indeed, if you see Jobbird, or if you see Joblift, probably there's not so much of a difference if you just look at it. And I quite like the analogy that I came up with yesterday, comparing it to sort of Formula One cars. Yeah. Like there's a Mercedes on the one hand, and Mercedes-Benz who is dominating since, I don't know, 8 years. Then you would have, I know, probably one that is struggling a lot, like a Williams, for those who are familiar with Formula One. And from the outside, they look very much the same. The question is what is really below the hood. And so I am obviously not as thinking in a way that we are the Mercedes-Benz, but we think that we have really a lot under the hood. And I've also prepared 1 or 2 slides that I can show to the audience to sort of give it a little bit of a flavor in a sense.
Yes, please, because you've got another engine. We believe that, but can you make it concrete?
Sure.
Yeah, please show us.
I hope the technology is working.
I hope so too.
Switching to a slide. So the audience should be seeing now a slide on which you can see our desktop experience. So if a job seeker enters our site via desktop, he or she would see that page. And what you can see here are search results. And what we display here is a specific search for a developer job in Berlin. And you see search results from various fancy startups. There are multiple of them around here in Berlin. One of them would be Finleap, etc. Zalando, of course, is also in there. So I guess what is very different, and it starts actually off page with us, and this is also the bigger topic of the interview today, what role marketing really plays here. And I think it already starts off page in our sense, the way we acquire a user, via which traffic acquisition channel we acquire a user. And we've stored around, in the last 4 years, around 60 terabyte of data. And most or the majority share of that data actually is tracking data across one of our 500 traffic acquisition channels. So the obvious ones would be the Googles of this world, display channels, etc. But there are many others. And for each category, if you want, so for each industry segment, we have stored away data and pretty much can say for which industry, for which vertical, which channel is working, to really simplify it. And so to go back to the user journey, so the user just entered our site, is searching for a developer job in Berlin. And I guess the difference you obviously have here on the top, the classical filters that are very helpful. But we have experimented a lot with conversational UI. And the parts that are moving here on the side, you can see something what we internally, or not only internally, we trademarked it, called the job coach experience. And the basic idea behind that is that in a very gamified way, the user can engage with the platform. Actually, it's pretty much designed for mobile. On mobile, it works perfectly, but here on desktop, you can, for the sake of illustration, I think it works pretty well. And what you can see, and we've repeated it now a couple of times, the user engages with the platform. First here, for example, we ask for which coding languages do you know, and the user clicks on CSS and confirms that. Then we ask for experience level, mid, and confirms that, and then how would you define your role? Front end, as opposed to back end or front or full stack. And that already gives us so much more information than for actually allowing for a better matching than anything else, maybe even more than a classical LinkedIn profile or Xing, a massive platform here in Germany. Why? Because it not only shows the skill set of the user, but actually also parts of the preferences. And this is only the start. These were the first 3 questions. Just to illustrate a little bit, because there was before the interview with Dr. Sullivan, which I found very inspiring. And he said, if you want to work at Google, you probably would have a strong preference for taking naps after your lunch break, and it's even encouraged. So actually we go a step further and we say, hey, what I mentioned before, a job is so much more complex than simply matching skills. So I can do CSS or any other code language, so you have to work at Zalando, but it includes also a lot of preferences of the job seeker. And what we show here is just one example in the top. So which benefits would be a good addition to your daily job? Is it, for example, a dog-friendly office? Do I have a gym subscription, fresh food? So there are multiple dimensions that you can actually ask the user, and where you can really create a really round profile.
Yeah. So you proved that you're not only helping the job seeker to find the next job, but also be a kind of job coach, even if you have a dog.
Yeah, I mean, you would laugh, but I would say, like in our office, for example, we have 2 or partly even 3 office dogs, and they really do a massive difference. Also for me, they calm down the nerves, so I can only recommend that. But obviously, these preferences are only part of it, and why it's so important. And this is sort of the last slide that I want to show today, and that should help the audience to have really an idea of what when people always talk about data-driven in AI, what it means, at least in our context. So if I go from the left top to the right bottom, in the left top you see everything in our marketplace, what we call a job seeker focus. And the job seeker, in that sense, as we talked in the example we had before, it was a developer, and we already have this deep interaction tracking data of this specific developer, but also of the channels where we basically acquire those users. We have, that's the second message here on the top left, these micro-learnings from this questionnaire, the job coach that we just showed. And by doing so, by combining those elements, and also exactly this dog example, or fresh foods, or interested in gymnastics and all these preferences, we are able to create these multi-dimensional candidate profiles at the end of the day. And this is the one side of the marketplace. The other side of the marketplace is what you can see on the right side of the slide. I think what is really fundamental to provide this great match, and a lot of people or experts in the industry call it, on the one, taxonomy. We borrowed the knowledge graph from quite well-known former startup from Silicon Valley. Internally, we call it also Joblift. Where we basically aggregate all the job content that we receive from our customers. And customers could be agencies, customers could be direct companies, customers could be job boards in our case. And we aggregate this content, and do not only aggregate, but have multiple machine learning algorithms running in this aggregation process by our import pipeline, where we process more than 12 million job items on a daily basis. And what we are doing is we completely disaggregate those job descriptions, because everybody who ever wrote a job description, I am definitely one of them, knows how hard it is. And if you ask 3 different recruiters to create a job description for a CRM manager or a performance marketing manager, there will be 3 very different job descriptions. And I'm not judging here, but this is simply how complex this product job is again.
Okay.
And so what we do is we disaggregate these job descriptions, and then simply say completely independent of the job title of this very job description. We deconstruct it into the single elements and attributes that actually the job seeker needs in order to get the job done.
Yeah. This is mainly to help the job seeker. What's in it for the recruiter?
Correct. This is totally right. And I think this is also part of our philosophy when we said we really start with the job seeker first. We want to become the digital career advisor for them. I think the better job we do for the job seeker, the more engaged the job seeker is, the more at the end of the day data points we have, the better profile we have of the job seeker, the better for the recruiter. Because, it's simply the better we understand the job seeker, the better we can do the matching at the end of the day.
Okay, understand. And you also told me something about cost per click, cost per hire, per qualitative hire, per applicant. Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can speak hours and days about these topics.
Sure.
What is extremely interesting, I have to say, is that we started out of Germany 5 years ago, and then quickly added in 2017, 2018 other European markets such as the Netherlands, but also France, UK, and then in 2018 also the US. And actually all those markets operate very differently. So the structure of the markets is different, the participants are different. And so for us it was very interesting to see the diverse approaches to actually performance-based recruiting. And I also mentioned that yesterday in our phone call, Ronald, when we discussed this topic, and I think regardless if it's CPC, if it's CPH, if it's CPA, I think all of those metrics are performance-oriented, and this is also what we do. And I guess to a certain extent what our platform allows us to do. At the end of the day, this is simply a way or measure of how we communicate with recruiters on the one hand, how recruiters specifically measure the performance of not only of our platform, but of all the platforms. And What I also have to say, Netherlands, I think within Europe is definitely one of the most advanced markets. So with our clients, we are much more in discussions around CPH.
Sorry about that.
So what I like, and in Germany, it's the status is still quite a different one. And I would say where we are coming from, and I think we are still very early in our journey yet, I would say we are working, in Netherlands probably at 80-90% on a CPC basis, but CPA and CPH is measured. And we feel very comfortable with that and want to be part of this paradigm shift away from, let's say, I think it's overused, this post and pray methodology, because in Netherlands at least it's not the case anymore. There are other markets in Europe where it's still the case, I would say.
Yeah.
But we love to be part of this journey in transforming really the recruiting industry towards those more advanced metrics. And I think where we, at least with Joblift, are at the moment, I think we come from, since we aggregated a lot at the beginning, we transitioned into a high volume recruitment in the high volume recruitment industries, a lot around sales, logistics, etc. Healthcare, actually, where we are very strong, where we do a lot exclusively actually on CPA basis or CPQA, where we take over part of the risk or share the risk with the recruiters. But we are very open to also go the next step and see how we can CPH work in a sustainable fashion.
Okay. Vielen Dank für deine Präsentation und für das Gespräch. Bis zum Berlin.
Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ja, I hope that really unfortunately I would have loved to come to Utrecht, but hopefully next year.
Herzlich willkommen.
Thank you.
Danke.
Tschüss.
Ciao.